actually, it's Christians.
2 Christians to be exact. I'm Christian Taylor.
And I'm Christian Miller.
And this is the podcast for small creators.
All right, Christian, it is episode 2. How are you doing today?
I am great. I'm actually on a rare school break this week. So that's fantastic because being homeschooled, it's like you never really get a break, if you know what I mean. I don't know if you were homeschooled, but as a homeschooler, when you get a break, you rejoice.
Yeah, I was homeschooled through 8th grade, and I remember summer break oftentimes not being very much of a break, and that was always frustrating.
Yeah, the downside is I'm doing so much right now. I'm getting through school at a very slow pace. So yeah, my summer's probably going to be somewhat like that.
Oh, I feel for you. I will be working at my university all summer long trying to pay that tuition bill, so... my summer will be great too.
Gotta get it done somehow. Well,
Yes.
Man, your audio sounds like 80 million% better than it did on the last episode.
That's because perhaps I'm not using a shotgun mic I bought for like $15 and am instead using Denison, my college's mic in their recording room. So that might be why.
Yeah, I think we're like on the same level as far as audio goes now, which is amazing because I felt like that was our weakest link. So we are like totally ready to roll with episode 2. And do you want to introduce our first topic, or really our main topic for the podcast?
I would love to, because you kind of got to pick the topic last week.
Or last month.
Last week.
We're doing this monthly for now, by the way. I don't think we specified that in episode 1.
Well, I think we might have, but right now it's turned into more like month and a halfly.
Yeah, we're trying our best, guys. We're both students.
It's rough, okay?
It is. The struggle is real.
All right, so the topic of our video today, gosh, I'm on point right now, okay? Is the topic of the podcast today is going to be, what if you make a video or a podcast or something like that makes you lose subs, probably because you get backlash or something. Maybe you just lose subs, but let's assume that there's backlash involved. Like, what's the proper response, and how should that affect your mindset going forward? So I don't know how much experience you have with this, Christian.
I've never really looked at my analytics as far as which videos are losing subs, but I do have kind of something in the same realm that I'll get into. Do you want to share your experience first, or do you want me to?
I can start us off. I actually have made a video that definitely lost me subscribers and kind of actually alienated me from a whole kind of subgenre of like small movie fans online and all that. So I made a review of a movie, and in that video review, I made a joke that was not the most thought out. I'm not going to really specify what it was because I took the video down and it's in the past, but it had some strong reactions. I distinctly remember being called, people saying, I was a terrible person. I had no talent. How could I make this awful joke? And it was actually like really awful in terms of like my self-esteem and my morale. So I kind of want to run through what I did there and what I did wrong in my response to it. So the first thing I did wrong was read all of the hate comments. That was a mistake. And by all, I don't mean that many, except there weren't that many on the video itself, But in the Facebook group that I had been part of at the time, the video had gotten shared and there were like, I don't know, 20, 30, 40, 50 just comments bashing me. And I read all of them. And so that was my first mistake. I think what I should have done, and I think what you should do, and this is just my opinion, if you make a video that you're like people are starting to kind of backlash against, don't read the comments, right? Until once you know what the issue is that people have, take that video, right, and show it to people you trust who aren't going to just destroy you, and ask them kind of for their opinion. I know what kind of helped me know what to do in this scenario was a friend of mine who was also in that group saw the video and he commented on the video. He said, "Hey, so I know that you didn't mean to like make like a really hurtful joke here, but maybe you should take it down because I think you'll avoid a lot more stress and hurt that way if you do it." And it was someone kind of that I knew taking a second to be like really calm and generous with their response to my video that kind of helped me figure out how to handle it.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. So, thinking about what you said, you clearly had a following of some sort and, you upset that following. So you're saying you made like a response video reading the comments?
No. I mean, I just read all of them. Like I'm not saying I'm saying I took the time to read all of the comments, and actually a lot of them weren't even followers of mine. They were just also in that same group, and the post went like viral within the group, if you will, so that a lot of the group saw it. This was a Facebook group, by the way. So no, what I did is I read every single angry comment. I read it, and I think that was a mistake because once I understood what people had an issue with, there's basically no reason to read the mean comments after that because it's just going to tell you A, what you already know, and B, just really tear you down.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I've had my fair share of hate comments. Okay, so that's interesting. So I guess what I'm trying to get at, because I haven't had a similar experience, is what did you take into account moving forward? Like,
Right.
it seems to me like you realized, okay, maybe I was at fault this time. What did you do after that?
So first thing I did, like my friend suggested, is I took the video down. And then I kind of just took like a breath and tried to separate out all of the people who are saying, awful things, like you're a monster and stuff, and just think, okay, what led me, what things did I not consider when I thought that this joke was a good idea? So the joke I made was pretty dark. And the problem is I made it on that joke on a review of a kid's movie. Now,
okay.
That's the thing is the movie's really bad. And so not to justify it. But so I just reviewed the Emoji Movie, which is also a kids movie. And in that review, I was pretty vulgar and very, very kind of opinionated about it. And I kind of tried a similar format for this next review I did. Because this movie that I reviewed, I reviewed The Nut Job 2, Nutty by Nature, which is worse than the Emoji Movie, actually. It's an embarrassment to everyone involved in it. And I didn't really take into account that the people who would see my Emoji Movie review are going to be mostly people who are in on the joke of the Emoji Movie, right? And that it's these are going to be people who are probably more internet wise, right?
Right.
Versus with this review of this kids movie that I was doing, where if the target demographic of the movie was watching my review, we're talking about little kids. And I've just made a joke that is definitely not very that's really dark and definitely not super kid friendly. So I think the problem is that I didn't really consider my audience, or rather not just my audience, because my audience is mostly, people around my age, but I didn't consider the reach that I could have outside of my audience, which is something that, like, when you make movie reviews, especially, you need to consider. And I just simply didn't. So I think I kind of realized that moving forward, I really wanted to consider who could be watching my reviews. And like one of the outcomes of that is, so my brother Dominic is on my channel with me now, and he is 11, so 12. Sorry, he's 12, and so I have a feeling that some of his friends and their siblings and all that are going to stumble upon our channel now. And that means that going forward, because I have to know my audience and know who could watch my videos, I need to maintain a more appropriate tone versus when I was first making videos, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. So I'd like to kind of talk about my experience with losing subs. So I will say that I have not lost a ton of subs. I actually went and looked at my lifetime my lifetime analytics on my channel, and it said I lost around 300 subscribers. I am now at 1,300 subscribers. So, I've lost a fair amount. However, when I go and look at the videos on the report and sort it by subscribers lost, the most subscribers I've lost on a single video is 7. And on that same video, I gained 134 subscribers. So that's more like people, maybe they see the video in their feed, they tap it, they're like, I don't really watch this guy anymore. They unsubscribe.
Right.
So in that sense, I have not ever had a situation with like this massive backlash of losing subscribers. However, I do want to talk about something that is very similar but slightly different, and that is dislikes. Because I have my fair share of hated videos on my channel. And here's what I've learned. Usually, it's either because people are just brutal or because you have kind of failed to do your research. Now, let me kind of dig into 2 specific scenarios. So I have a very cringy video. I think I probably even talked about this in the last episode. I was like 11 or 12 and I reviewed this product. And at the time, I was doing the best I could do, but it's a crappy video. I was 11 or 12. So that video has hundreds of dislikes. That video also has over 200,000 views and rakes in ad revenue. So that video has not lost me subscribers, but it hasn't really gained me any either. In a sense, it's really just raking in ad revenue while people rant in the comments. Now, to me, that falls under the brutal category because I'm like, I was 12 at the time. I did the best I could do, and people are shredding me for how I look, for how I talked, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, I'm choosing to leave it up because of the amount of views it has and the amount of ad revenue it's getting me. The other kind of dislikes I receive or I've figured out is lack of research. And in my Opera versus Chrome video, which I also talked about in the last episode, that video has a fair amount of dislikes. And when I began to look through the comments, I would see people saying there were places where I got my facts wrong. And people also didn't like that I chose a side. It's a versus video. So at the end, I was just blatant and I'm like, Chrome is better than Opera, period. So what I did was in my Firefox versus Chrome video, I learned from my mistakes. I made sure I researched every fact I was talking about and double checked it. And instead of saying, hey, this is better than this, I said, okay, here's who Firefox is for. Here's who Chrome is for. And for me personally, I use Chrome because X, Y, and Z. And what I found is my audience was much more satisfied with that that video only has a couple dislikes compared to a ton of likes, and it's getting a much more positive response. So I know that's not losing subscribers, but to me, that's probably the closest thing I can kind of identify with the experiences I've had in that area.
Right. Okay, so that makes sense. I think a lot of it is just really learning from your mistakes. And a lot of times the only ways to like find out that you've made a mistake is, when people tell you. So I think it's just important to be aware of, your audience's reaction. Again, don't get like, if you get a bunch of hate comments on a video, try not to get caught up in all that. But also don't be unaware of what your audience is thinking of a particular video or of an idea so that you can approach it the right way.
Right. I mean, it's that balance. On the video where I'm getting hate for my appearance at the time, how I talked, honestly, I just ignore it because I was wearing myself out. I was getting upset reading the comments. I was falling victim to what the people wanted. They were, trying to trigger me. And then I finally realized, okay, that was when I was 12. Like, I've moved on from that. I'm in a completely different stage of life. So I don't care what people think. On my Opera versus Chrome video, I started seeing a pattern in certain things that I did wrong. And so I fixed that. Another example is I had this one video in particular where I clearly screwed up in editing. People kept complaining the audio is too loud, or sorry, the background music is too loud. The background music is too loud. Tons of comments. So what I actually did in response to that was went back in my editing software, lowered the background music, and uploaded the video again unlisted and put a link in the description. So then my response was, check the link in the description. I've got a fixed version with lower audio.
That's actually a really clever response that I probably would not have thought of.
Yeah, it took me some time to be like, hey, I can actually go back and fix this. But then I felt like the weight is off me because every time people complain, it's like, I've done what I can do to fix it. And if they want, they can go to that link and they can watch the fixed version.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah. Do we have anything else to say on this topic? I know we haven't been talking about it for super long, but I feel like we've pretty much covered our bases.
Yeah, I think we have. I think we're ready to move on to the things we learned this month. Since you went first last month, I think that logically I would go first this month.
I think that sounds like a great idea.
All right, well, let's just roll right into it. So last month, for those of you OG listeners, I mentioned there was something that I was saving for this month in the things we learned section. And that is diving deeper into the algorithm and what I've learned about suggested videos and how you can get there. So essentially, I've learned how important the algorithm is and how you want your videos to be recommended, because that can make or break your channel. With how many videos there are on YouTube, the search is important, don't get me wrong, but for the most part, people are going to discover your channel through the recommended feed. So this month is not really a tip per se, more of education, something that kind of opened my eyes. And that is the algorithm recommends videos that are foolproof. What I mean by that is YouTube's entire goal is to keep you watching as long as possible. And that's because the more you watch, the more ad revenue they make. So they're not going to put some amateur's video in the recommended feed, because if I'm watching a video and I say, hey, what's this recommended video? And I tap it, and after 10 seconds, I'm bored and close YouTube, they've lost me. In a sense, if I were that creator, I just cost YouTube that browsing session that could have gone longer if my video performed better. So YouTube is taking a look at your average watch time. They're seeing how long are people staying on your video and are they clicking through to the next video. And if that's not happening, your video is not going to be recommended and it's not going to see the light of day. So I say this to say my videos that have kind of blown up, when I go and look at the average watch time, I notice it's quite a bit higher than my other videos. So there's going to be a little bit of a tip here, and that is if you don't have videos that are getting recommended, if you have maybe 500 subscribers and all your videos have 50 to 100 views, that probably means you're staying inside of your audience and nothing has broken out. So what I would do is go and look at your average watch time, see when it drops, if there's like a dip in that video or if it's kind of steady across the whole video, and see if you notice a pattern. Is there a particular part of the video where you're super boring and you're losing people's attention? But essentially, if you want to get recommended, you have to keep people's attention and you have to get them to stay on YouTube. Otherwise, YouTube simply isn't going to waste their time on your video because there's so many other creators they could be recommending that they know are going to keep you on YouTube.
Sounds like good advice. You know, I'm going to be honest. What I learned this last month doesn't go against that idea, but it kind of completely disregards it.
All right, I'm interested. I'm listening.
Okay, so what I learned this past month, is make what you want to make and don't really worry about the timeliness necessarily, especially if YouTube isn't your job. So I'm going to give you an example. So my brother and I right now are ranking the entirety of the MCU, Marvel Cinematic Universe, like video by video by video by video, or like movie by movie by movie, one movie per video. This is not a particularly good thing if we're trying to really build our channel up, because no one's looking up reviews for Iron Man or The Incredible Hulk right now, because those movies came out a decade ago. However, Dominic and I are making these videos because this is the topic that interests us right now. So sure, maybe this video of Iron Man, only gets 20 views. Maybe, with 100 subscribers. Maybe the video of the Hulk, even the Incredible Hulk reviewing that movie, gets even less. But Dominic and I enjoy making them together, and this is what we're intrigued by at the moment, trying to see how we feel about the whole MCU, going through and rewatching and reviewing all of them. So I think while it's important to kind of step outside of your audience and try to figure out what kind of videos are going to get you kind of trending, or at least like get you extra views, I think it's also important to just, especially if you're a small creator, like I assume most people who listen to this podcast are, to make what interests you, because ultimately that's all you're going to be here for, I guess.
Yeah, so my kind of comeback on that would be, first of all, I would say you can apply what I was saying, which is to be mindful of how long you're keeping your viewers' attention. Regardless of if it's a trending topic, you can certainly be looking in the analytics of your movie reviews and be like, all right, am I holding their attention for 2 minutes out of a 10-minute video, for 5 minutes, for 8 minutes? You can definitely still be mindful of that. And my other thing would be that I agree with you in the sense that you have to do what you're interested in. Otherwise, it's just going to seem fake and it's not going to turn out well. Because if you try to manufacture a trending video, chances are you're not going to do a great job because you're trying to force it out. And because you don't do a great job, well, you're not going to get good watch time and it's not going to get recommended.
That's all right. That's fair. I wasn't really going against what you said. As I said, I wasn't really going against your advice, but there's there's like, especially this is when it comes to movie reviews and stuff of that nature, movie related content. The other thing that is most often considered beyond watch time is how recently the movie was released, right? So if I want to make
Yeah.
a video about the history of the comic book character Black Panther, TV shows and comics and whatever other adaptations they've had, I want to drop that like the night before Black Panther comes out.
Yeah, I get what
I
you're saying.
ostensibly that's what traditional wisdom would say. And all I'm saying is that maybe just make what interests you, especially if you're a small creator and you don't have any sort of like really important income coming from that. And I do agree though that you should be monitoring your watch time and seeing where the watch time drops off, because you can do that and see where, like, there's a spot where watch time will drop, and usually it's like some kind of boring part of the video, and you can learn to try to avoid those in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when I look at kind of the market I'm in, the equivalent to what you're saying for me would be when smartphones come out, usually within a week, everyone has their review out on it. So that would be like saying, hey, I'm going to review the iPhone 4S in 2018 because I still think that it's a great phone. This is just me paraphrasing. I don't think the iPhone 4S is that great anymore. But anyway, I'm trying to like give a scenario here for tech. So I'm just going to review the iPhone 4S now because it's something I'm interested in, and I'm not going to be concerned that no one's searching for it. I'm just going to make it for the sake of making it. And I totally understand and agree what you're saying. That is the amazing benefit of being a small creator is you don't have this pressure. You can make what you want to make just for the fun of making it without an audience that's like, dude, that's a 6-year-old phone. Like, what in the world?
Right. I know. Like Dominic and I have made these. We've made two so far. I mean, we've filmed more than two, but the third one's about to go out soon. But we've made these videos and they haven't picked up a ton of views. But Dominic and I feel like we kind of just don't care, because it's allowed us to kind of connect more with each other and talk about these movies that we like. And so it doesn't really matter whether or not they do super well, because we're into them. So that's kind of all that matters.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not passionate about what you're creating, what are you doing? Honestly, that goes right back to the mindset we talked about in episode 1. If you haven't listened to it, definitely go back and listen to that. But essentially, if this is rolling around to the same thing of, if you're trying to create a video just for the sake of views, then you're obviously thinking you're just going to get rich on YouTube, which is probably not going to happen unless you work really hard and you're genuine about it, and you're doing it for the wrong reason.
I agree. Right now, I'm looking up on my YouTube channel. So what I noticed looking at these two videos that I've made recently with my brother Dominic is, sure, they don't have a ton of views, but their like ratio to the amount of views they have is very high, which to me indicates that my audience likes what I'm making, right? So it doesn't even matter if a wide audience of people isn't seeing it, right? But as long as the people who are watching my video like are enjoying it, then I have no complaints.
Yeah, that's all you can ask for. Even if it's a super niche thing with not a lot of viewers, if you're pulling a lot of likes, that's great. I mean, I love to see on my videos when I have a lot of likes, even if it's not a lot of views, because I know the audience is engaged and they're enjoying that content. So definitely very interesting. Do you think we're ready to move on to the questions?
I think we are. So we have two questions this week. Let's start with the one I think we'll have a shorter answer for, which
Okay.
is from Troy Woolbrandt. And if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and read out his question.
Yeah, go for it.
He says, "Hey, you know that feeling when you wake up one morning and realize, oh shoot, I haven't actually uploaded anything in a really long time. You simultaneously know that you have to act quickly before you lose whatever audience you've built up. But if you don't put out something good, they might wonder why they're following you in the first place. You're simultaneously trying to stave off obscurity and mediocrity. And all your real life friends who were initially like, yeah, go for it, forgot that you're still doing it and and you wonder if anyone's even going to be around by the time you finally put together something that you're satisfied with. I wouldn't know. Just asking for a friend. Sounds rough. Anyway, love the show so far. You guys are doing great. So firstly, thank you very much, Troy."
Yes, thank you. We much appreciate the compliment and that you wrote into us because that's awesome. If you want to submit a question, the email is itschristianpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from you guys, even if you just want to shred us and be like, you totally suck. An email in our inbox is better than nothing.
Here's everything wrong with your podcast, and I made a numbered list. We'll even take that.
Hey, that means you took the time to listen to our podcast in detail, and to me, that's a success.
Fair enough. So I really like this question from Troy, actually, because I've experienced this many times over the course of this past school year. So as you know, I go to a little college called Denison University, but I transferred in this year. Before that, I went to the University of Akron. And at the University of Akron, I had a lot more free time to make videos. So a lot of last school year, I was pumping out videos weekly or even more than weekly when I had my friend Jordan working with me. And then I went to school at Denison, and I think I've made, over the course of this school year, maybe like 7 videos at most, as opposed to like one every week. And it's definitely stressful because it's like, I don't want to make just some crappy little video when I've been gone for so long, but also I can't afford to spend months on this, but also I can't just take a day and make a great video, like spending 12 or 20 hours on it, over the course of a day or two, because I have all these other responsibilities I have. It is frustrating. I will freely admit. Do you have any advice?
Yeah, so this is going to sound harsh, but my advice would be, what is your goal? Because if you just want to create videos, then you do have to upload at some frequency, probably I would say 4 times a year. If you're uploading less than 3 to 4 times a year, then people are legitimately probably going to think your channel is dead. And so you might want to work on that. However, if you are really trying to pursue YouTube full time, you need to be uploading at least once a week as much as you can. So what I'm leading to is, if you are trying to have an upload schedule, say once a week, and you've gone 2, maybe 3 weeks without uploading something, then you should try to focus as much as possible to get out a quality video with the time you have. If your goal is just to, do YouTube on the side and you haven't uploaded in maybe 2 months, take a month to make a video if you need to. So it depends on your goal. For me personally, for the past about 2, maybe 3 years, I've been doing a weekly upload schedule. And I do miss on it sometimes. Just like 2 weeks ago, I was so busy I wasn't able to make a video. And there have been times that I've been in a crunch. So my response to this problem would be, you need to have a list of disposable content. Now, what do I mean by that? You need to have a list of ideas you can record when you're in a pinch. And I have a list like this because I've got videos, say product reviews or other types of videos that require more work. They need to be more planned and they take a lot of effort. I've also got videos that are opinionated. Maybe in my case, what do I think about texting while driving? What do I think of net neutrality? Things that are hot topics that if I just need a video quick, I've already got my opinion on that. I can set up the camera and just go. So I think that would be my number one advice is have a list of ideas you can go to, because there is something to be said for needing to get a video out quickly when you realize, man, I haven't uploaded in a long time. Because as we always talk about, the YouTube algorithm, it wants to see you uploading frequently. So that would be my input.
I think that's fair. I think the only other thing that you can do is basically recognize the shift in priorities, right? So when I went to the University of Akron last year, my whole focus basically of my free time in a lot of ways was on YouTube. And it became kind of a very much of a something that I poured my time and energy into. However, once I've arrived at Denison, it's become less of a priority, not because I care about it less, but because I have so many other things on my plate. So I've kind of shifted it from that kind of full-time thing like you were talking about to something more of just making the videos when I can. And now, obviously, ideally, I'd like to shift it back into a more full-time thing. But I think sometimes you need to be kind to yourself and realize where your priorities are, and that it's not necessarily a bad thing if making frequent videos is not your priority at the moment. If it is, yes, that's something you need to try to handle. And I think that's great. The advice you gave is great advice. If you're like, I need to get a video out and I need to kind of keep posting weekly or something, consistently. But if you are feeling like maybe you've got a bit of a shift in priorities from how you used to feel, I think you should kind of consider that. But yeah, that's kind of my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's great advice. Just realize we're all human. So if you're on a schedule, you miss a week, 2 weeks, even 3 weeks, it's not the end of the world. Regroup, make a video. But you need to be honest with yourself and say, is this a priority? If it's not, recognize that. Maybe even make a video and just share with your audience, hey, here's what's going on. I just am going down a different path in life right now, and I'm not going to be uploading on a schedule for a bit. When it comes to burner videos, that's kind of what I refer to them as. I will say burner does not have to mean crappy. You have to be creative. For example, I one week needed a burner video and I ordered these smart light bulbs. I pre-ordered them, just the mini version of my bigger smart light bulbs. Now I got to thinking, okay, I need a video that's quick and easy. I'm one of the first people to get these light bulbs. It's a light bulb, so it's not like it's a super hot product, but why don't I just do an unboxing, kind of an overview, read the facts of the light bulb. So I get the light bulbs, I set up my camera, I unbox it, read the facts off, do a super short video. The video's 2 minutes and 14 seconds. No work at it at all. All I did was unbox it and read the facts about the product. The video has 7,000 views and 60 likes with only 5 dislikes. I spent maybe an hour on this video. So you have to just be smart. Make sure you're still being tasteful about it. Don't just put out a really crappy video, but there are ways you can optimize your workflow and recognize quick videos. Another one is I did one about net neutrality, literally just setting my camera down and having an honest talk with my opinion on it. Got 1,000 views, which is more than I average on my channel. So really, it's recognizing what makes a quick video and what takes more time.
I think that's good advice. Ultimately, if you wake up and you realize, crap, I haven't made a video in however long, just make a video. Don't overthink it if you don't have to. Just make a video or start working on a video, right? Unless you're a huge content creator and your income all relies on this, it's probably not the end of the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And even, this is kind of random, but I hear songwriters say this, is sometimes the process of making or writing a song will, even if it's the worst song ever, it gets the creative juices flowing again, and then you write an amazing song. So applying that to video, you could just be having a really bad day, make just a crappy video you never release, but in doing that, you might get inspiration for an amazing video.
Right. I feel like we're all small content creators here, right? So try not to stress out about it too much, because it's not worth it, right? It's a video, okay? If you haven't made a video, it's not like it's the end of the world. And I feel bad because I've done this myself, and it does you no good to just sit there and go like, I need to upload a video because if I don't, what if everyone just stops watching my going to my channel, and YouTube's the algorithm's gonna kill me, and like none of that does you any good. And I think it's good to take a minute, step back, have some perspective.
Definitely agree. Well, we should probably move on to our next question because it's gonna be a long one.
Do you wanna read this off for us?
Sure, I will. So this one is from Joey Bartlett, and it says, "Hey, Christian." It's all in caps and it has like a lot of I's and A's.
I like your Kevin impression.
Yeah, not a professional Kevin impersonator here. But it says, this is Joey Bartlett. So me and a friend did a trial run of a podcast we hope to create called Kale Chips. Due to my friend's last name being Kaler, I think is how you say it. I'm the quieter, nerdy one, while he's the louder, video nerdy one. So then he's got a numbered list. 1. After getting the numerous issues with this episode out of the way, how would you recommend we fix these problems? Such as not stating our name, no title, microphones not picking up sound, etc. 2. What do you like about this podcast, and what would you like to see us try in the future? And 3. Do you want us to do more episodes? Thanks for the help. And he attached a YouTube link. It is unlisted, so I'll check with him and see if we can put it in the description. But hopefully with his permission, we can put that link in the description so you guys can listen to it if you want and kind of have context to what we're about to discuss, because it would probably make a whole lot more sense if you've actually listened to it.
Right, and we'll try to kind of fill you in on the bits, especially if he says no. We'll try to make sure that we are giving as much clarity to our comments as possible, so it's still entertaining even if you didn't make the podcast. So I have opinions about this, Christian. I don't know if you do.
I do. Why don't you start us off?
I took notes while I was listening to this because it's an hour-long podcast, and I was like, I'm not going to remember things if I don't write it down. And I have a page of notes. So I might repeat some of the things he already addressed, and I won't go through all of them right now because, you'll want to jump in, I'm sure. But so I think I don't like the name Kale Chips, not because it's a bad name for a podcast, mind you, but I feel like both of the Joes need to have like a part of like not necessarily their name, but like their identity in the podcast together, right? So like calling it Kale Chips only really represents one of the two hosts. Now their names are Joey and Joel, So here's my thought. Those both shorten to Joe. So I'm not saying they should call it It's Joe, the podcast for intellectual homeschoolers.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
But maybe, it could be our sibling podcast. I don't know. Just a thought. But in all seriousness, no, I don't. I think that they need to try to find a name that kind of captures both of them. But that's my opinion. What do you think about the title?
Honestly, that did not phase me. The title just went right over my head. But now that you're saying it, that makes a lot of sense to me. Because like you said, that's centered around one person's name. So if it's not going to be about the topic of the podcast, but rather about the people, I do think it should feature both people somehow in the name.
Okay, so as they said, they don't, or as Joey said, they don't state their names at the beginning. I will say I liked their intro. It was basically something to the effect of like, well, how do we start a podcast? Well, you just ask yourself a question. And then they had some pretty good intro music. Not as good as our intro music, but not everyone's can be. I did like their kind of opening, although obviously I feel like they need to say their names at some point, but they know that too.
Yeah, so if I can jump in here, I guess we'll kind of walk through this from start to finish and both interject. I felt like the intro music was a bit long. That's a nitpick, but
I
was
agree.
A lot of the same thing just looping over for a long time. If you're not going to, first of all, I'm not sure why they're not stating their name, if that was a mistake or if that was by choice. But if that is by choice, I feel like you need a quick pitch, maybe like a tagline for your podcast. Like ours is the podcast for small creators. After this intro music, like, what am I listening to?
Right.
If I'm a first time listener, which in this case I was, help me understand. Give me like the 10-second breakdown of what to expect in this podcast.
Right. There's absolutely just kind of a lack of branding, even just like with names or what the podcast's about. I assume I feel like they must realize that. So my thought is just kind of that, yeah, their intro music was too long, and they need to if either say their names, or if they're not going to go have names in the podcast, which maybe that's a thing. I've never heard of that. Maybe have some sort of pseudonyms or something. I don't know, but
yeah,
you kind of need something that people can recognize you by.
Yeah, so then, okay, so we get past the intro, and this is where things get interesting. I'll be honest, they lost me at this part. I paused it and I had to take a deep breath. I'm like, I don't know if I can listen to this because there was no overview, and granted, it was in the title, but I just kind of thought it was going to be like science nerd speak for the whole hour. So I was like, I don't know if I could do this. But then I'm like, all right, I have to. This is for the podcast and they're counting on us for feedback. So I took a deep breath and I did listen to the entire episode. But my thing about the science section, now I don't have to like it. Just because I don't like it does not mean it's bad. It's not my thing, and that's okay. Like, people love Vsauce. They respect him. I respect him, but I don't like his videos. It's too intense for me, and I don't know what he's talking about. So with that being said, just because it felt like jargon to me, that doesn't mean it's bad. But I do feel like it was poorly put together, in the sense that later in the podcast, the next topic they covered, which we'll get to in a minute, it felt like they put some thought into, here's what we're going to talk about, and they had a very nice conversation. But this one felt one-sided.
100%.
It was like the guy. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting which one it was.
Joel is the one who doesn't talk I talked to Joey about this to make sure I had it right. Joel is the one who does not talk during the science section.
Okay.
Joey is the one that does.
So Joey was basically rambling off these nerd facts about knuckles and popping your fingers and how it relates to shrimp
And
and
atomic bombs.
this other stuff. It felt more like
Nuclear fission.
Like, hey, here's all these random fun facts. And then Joel was like, oh, okay,
Yep.
cool. Like, it
Got it.
Yeah. So that was a little rough.
I'll agree with you. I think one of the biggest problems is, Joe, you talk too slow, buddy. Like you don't need to, like, I don't want you to talk super fast. I actually have a problem with talking too fast sometimes. But like, sometime if I'm listening to your podcast on 1.5 speed and I'm thinking, yes, this person is speaking at a normal speed, there might be a bit of an issue with your talking speed. Also, Joey, you do have a tendency to have dead space where either you finish a thought and Joel doesn't jump in, or you just, between phrases that you're saying, you have these long pauses. And, even if you have to stutter a little or there's like an in there, at least that fills the space. Whereas that's a little frustrating, that just dead silence. And maybe you can cut it out, edit it out in post. I don't know how much you're willing to do there, but just especially in the first half, there is just too much dead space.
Yeah, for sure. So my second comment. So we get out of the science section and then we go into a really cool discussion about the impact of online video. Now, I love the discussion. Not much critiques there. What I will say is this feels like two different podcasts to me. I understand what you guys are trying to do is like combine nerd worlds, like two nerds, two different types of nerds coming together to make a podcast. But this may not be the popular opinion, but I think you guys need to focus on maybe one thing, whether that's going to be video stuff, science stuff. It really felt like it needed to be two different podcasts to me in that sense.
Right. Well, I think it's also rough in that we don't even have their personalities connecting, like kind of connecting the two, because we don't know who you are. We don't know anything about you. And I do actually have issue for one other thing before I get into the section on internet discussion. You guys, your volume was a little low, and
it was, yeah, it needed to be turned up.
There was some bad background noise. Sometimes that can't be helped, I know, but like I could hear someone coughing at one point. It sounded like the mic was being adjusted several times.
Yeah, if you, I'm not sure what mic you're using. It may be a great mic. Make sure you have it as close to your mouth as possible, because right now my mic is right up to my mouth. Right now it's like a foot away, and I guarantee you there was just a huge difference in the sound quality. So get it up to your mouth. If you don't have the best mic, a Blue Snowball is a great budget mic. You can probably find them on eBay for $30 or $40. A step up from that is the Blue Yeti, and those are maybe 60 to 80 used. Those are two great budget mics that are just plug and play and will get you fantastic audio with little effort.
Right. And since you two, it sounds like you guys record together based on like the helium section at the end. You can probably split the cost on a mic, which would be, ideal if you've got a budget,
One technical note, and this may be a bit challenging if you're sharing a mic, which it sounds like you are, but I did want to note this, is that it was obviously recorded in stereo. One person was sitting on the left and one person on the right. If you have headphones on, that's kind of cool, because it's like one person's talking in your left ear and one person's talking in your right ear, and it feels kind of cool, like a conversation. However, podcasts are not mixed that way. And the reason is, if I am maybe out and about and I've only got one earbud in, then I can only hear one person talking, and that becomes an issue. So if you're using one mic, that may be a problem. You may potentially need to get a second mic. If that's just how you're editing it on purpose, I would make sure that you pan it in a way that it is even on both sides. So that was a small technical thing that bothered me.
I thought the ending it with helium was very funny. They talked about the bit went on too long, I think.
Yeah, it was, well, I listen to some podcasts that literally have like after show segments that go on for sometimes 30 minutes of just chatter after the podcast. So that didn't bother me personally, because the only thing I would say about that is probably mention anything you want to mention, like social media, subscribe, yada, 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 before you do that kind of stuff. Otherwise, you'll probably lose people during that segment.
Right.
Now, my last piece of feedback is on your title. So, the captivation of bubbles and the impact of online video is your title. The captivation of bubbles part was interesting.
Sorry, it's the cavitation of
You're
bubbles.
actually right, and I apparently can't read or pronounce stuff. And it's also 10:49 p.m. for me and 11:49 p.m. for you. So it's literally way too late to be podcasting, but we're doing it anyway.
The correct term is potting if you listen to Dear Hank and John, which you still
sorry.
haven't done.
You're gonna wow. Okay. One of these days, I'm gonna listen to it.
Right. Sure.
So back on my train of thought here. The cavitation of bubbles, that part's kind of cool. But I guess what I'm saying is, if you're a small podcast, you got to have a really catchy title that seems like something you can't get anywhere else. And I know we are a victim of this. I know that our episode 1 title was extremely boring, and that's something we're working on. But if I see the impact of online video, which is the part I focused on because I'm not really into the science part, to me that seems like the title of like an NPR podcast or some big name podcast. They could pull that off because they're NPR and you assume, oh, it's going to be high quality. But if I see, for all intents and purposes, a nobody who puts out a podcast that says the impact of online video, I'm going to think, boy, this seems so generic. It's probably something I can hear in a much higher quality form on some other podcast.
Not to talk about Dear Hank and John, but I'm going to talk about Dear Hank and John.
Oh, here we go.
Their titles are great. Do you want to know what their most recent title was? Danger Noodles and Little Boops.
Okay. I mean, that interests me, though.
The one before that was the Millennial Avocadome. One of them is Schrodinger's Floor. How to Befriend a Crow, which is such a weird title, and it makes sense if you've seen them. I hate to go on about Dear Hank and John. I don't, but I'm going. It's fine. But even though they have that audience, right? They make sure that they have these weird and quirky titles that reward the viewer for listening to the podcast. Just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, you can even pick out an obscure part of your conversation that's just really intriguing and make that the title. Mm-hmm. Make sure you're not doing clickbait. Make sure if you have something obscure, it is mentioned in your podcast, but there's definitely creative ways to do it. We don't claim to be experts. We're figuring that out right now. And
for sure,
hey, maybe in a few episodes down the road, we'll have some advice on what we've discovered. But definitely take a look at your titles. Make sure you are putting some thought into them. That is all the critiquing I have. Well, I want to make sure we did answer his questions. So he was asking, how do we recommend we fix the problems? I think we talked a lot about that.
I think we did.
What do you like about this podcast, and what would you like to see us try in the future? I just like to see you try a format. I felt like you guys were both comfortable talking with each other. You have good podcast voices. I like that. Um, I'd like to see you try a format. Come up with something with each other and see what happens.
I agree. I really like the rapport between you two. I think that you guys do a great job of bouncing off each other for the most part. I think you do better bouncing off each other when you both have an opinion on the topic, just given the content that we've seen from you. When one of you knows what you're talking about, the other guy, he seemed like he had a tough time. What I would like to see you try, again, like names are big stuff, little things like you guys are already aware of. Maybe try to kind of get a fix in on what the main theme of your show is, right? Like Dear Hank and John is creating dubious advice. The Inner Tube is the podcast for content creators. We are the podcast for small creators. Try to kind of find a niche that works for you, that you guys are interested in.
Yeah, in fact, I'd like to give you guys a challenge, which would be figure out what your niche is, figure out what your format is, and obviously make more episodes, but produce a podcast trailer and send it to us. And the value in that is because that's something you should have for anyone who's interested. Maybe like a 3 to 5 minute audio clip of you just saying, hey, here's who we are and here's what we do. Subscribe and follow along and check out our episodes.
I agree. I think I'd love to hear back from you guys. I think you guys do have a lot of potential to make some really great content.
Absolutely. Great job, guys. Thanks for sending in the email. Again, if you have a question, comment, or you just want to completely shred us and say we're the worst thing ever, the email is itschristianpodcast@gmail.com. Well, we have been rambling for an hour and 12 minutes, which is way past our
goal time. Yeah.
I don't know whether to feel like bad or cool. You know what I mean? Because like we were trying to stick to like 45 minutes. And when you break that format, sometimes the audience gets annoyed. But I'm also kind of proud because I've never done a podcast this long before.
I mean, neither have I, but this is also my second podcast, so I don't...
Yeah, you make a point.
Yeah.
Actually, fun fact, I had a podcast once before in my life. It was really cringy, but yeah.
You had another host before me, Christian?
No, okay, yes and no. I had a co-host, but he wasn't as dedicated. So the thing is, he was more of like a guest co-host. So half of the podcast I did alone, which was really awkward, and it's why the podcast just didn't work. It was a learning experience, but it was really cringy.
I'm glad you had that learning experience. No, I think if we decide we want to keep it shorter, we'll kind of figure that out as we go along, how we handle all that. But either way, if you're still with us here at the end of this second episode of It's Christian, thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next time.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever you listen to podcasts. Send us an email. Leave a comment if you're watching this on YouTube. Thanks again for watching, and we will catch you guys next month.